As I've said, we have the body trying to regulate the temperature, the normal temperature of the body. So once you overclothe and the body is doing its own mechanism, then you are sweating a lot. At the end of the day, you are adding more fevers to yourself. What will happen? The conversions will happen. So it's not advisable to overclothe. It's good to seek medical help. And if a fever is persistent, because if it's a viral infection, the fever is not about to continue being high. If your fever is less or more than 38 degrees centigrade, it's good to seek medical help.
Okay, and maybe Dr. Kako, before we move away from that, just general care that we should take for those vulnerable groups, especially the children. How do we test for fever, for temperatures? I know many of us probably have the traditional way of just putting your hand on the forehead. Is that effective enough? If one cannot afford a thermometer, there's some parents who have thermometers at home, but what are the ways that we can check and know that this fever now is going beyond what is normal?
I think it's very important actually to try and get a thermometer in the house. It actually doesn't cost that much. There's some basic thermometers which you can keep in the house. And it's important to have one of those, especially if you have a child. And I think children under 5 especially are quite vulnerable to complications of flus. So we need to be very careful. And I think in general, we should seek medical attention for any child under 5 with fevers. Because the example you gave, one of the complications is actually febrile convulsions. So it's important that you actually seek medical attention. The other part of the question was about checking. I think clinically, it's a bit, well, you can use the back of your palm, but the back of your hand, but I think it's not very objective. So it's good to have an actual thermometer to check.
But I think mothers have awesome hands.
No, they do. And it seems the backhand is magical because even when it comes to milk, it seems to be the same one that can check the temperature, whether the milk is good. Dr. Dindi, let's talk about wellness and fitness.
Yes.
In this cold weather, what are some of the exercises that one can engage in to ensure that you're healthy, you're okay, without necessarily putting yourself at risk? Because like I mentioned earlier, maybe if you run out in the cold and it's raining, you might be trying to keep healthy, but on the other hand, getting yourself vulnerable.
It's true, but that should not be an excuse. Yes, but but it's good to be cautious, especially for people who have asthma. It's a season that I would not advise one to go working out outdoors, especially when cold is a trigger. And if one has to walk outdoors, one of the cautions for people who are prone to having allergic tendencies with the ENT related or the chest complications of asthma, it's actually good to wrap a scarf around you. You know, loosely cover your airways. The nose, you can have a scarf around your face, actually. And that kind of filters the cold air from going straight into your airway and warms it a little bit. So that's one of the cautions. And actually, there's also something we call exercise-induced asthma. So I've written about that in my book. I said, but anyway, it's just good to be cautious and know what are your triggers and avoid them. And even in this season, if you're asthmatic, even when exercising indoors, which is what's advisable in the season, is actually good to have your medication at hand. And because for asthmatics, we have what we call reliever medication and the preventive medication. So the reliever is when you sense that you're having an attack, then you need to use that inhaler to be able to relieve yourself. The preventive, you use them habitually to prevent an attack. That said, the other thing is that for everyone, I think the gloomy weather outdoors might not be very attractive. And so, of course, that's where gyms are there. It's an enclosed environment. You can still go there and exercise. And the thing is that when it's cold, it doesn't mean that your metabolism has stopped working. So it's not an excuse not to work out. So do that. For me, I do it indoors. Overeating is the problem. I think for most people, when they think about weight management, they think exercise first. No, exercise has many benefits, and it's good for maintaining your weight loss, but it has a very small role when it comes to weight loss. So whatever you're eating during the cold season, you're going to have to deal with it afterwards. It tends to pile up. So be cautious how you eat. But again, for the elderly and for the much younger, it's a season where you're burning much more to try to keep warm. So to avoid that, it's good to dress them warmly enough, not to overdo it, because we've already seen there are risks for that. And the other thing, yeah, the elderly, it's still good to give them extra calories to be able to keep them, you know, in a good state. But for most people, all that you're consuming is not really necessary. You know, hot water can still keep you warm. If you have to do something, you know, that's sweeter, avoid adding a lot of extra sugar. So come on, what I'm saying is that you still need to keep at your regime. You have to be active.
Keep at it.
And monitor what you eat.
All right, Dr. Kakuo, your closing remarks and possibly just advising people on how to stay healthy in this weather.
So in the cold season, I think one thing we need to do is keep ourselves warm. And as Dr. Dindi said, for those who are vulnerable, who have asthma, who have allergy, you can actually put a scarf around your mouth so that you can prevent cold air. We have to keep washing our hands before eating, after using the loo, because at the end of the day, the infection actually comes from contact with the viral or viruses, and not actually the cold, but it just makes you susceptible to it. So washing your hands regularly, taking plenty of water, at least 8 glasses per day. And I think also avoiding areas which are overcrowded or rooms which are not ventilated and yet you're quite crowded in it.
All right. Angeline, your closing remarks?
I would say, on top of what my lecturer has said, it's boosting one's immunity. Immunity doesn't. I see many people go in and you want to do the multivitamin and such and such. All those things are not basically what they should be. Ideally, the immunity is about the fruits. Let's consume a lot of fruits, especially in this cold weather. We need a lot of vitamin C, which can be found in the local fruits like oranges and such, and that can boost immunity, and that will reduce the chances of contracting viral infections, which at the end of the day will resort now to the bacterial infections.
All right.
Yeah.
Dr. Fitness, as we close, your closing remarks, but also, is it true that weight loss, weight gain, whichever way, or health gain, I prefer to call it health gain than weight loss, because that I think is more friendly.
I love it.
Is it true that 70% of your weight loss or gain is down to food, not exercise?
It's actually approximated up to 80%. So
80%,
yes.
wow.
So, but what that highlights is that you need to focus more on your nutrition when you're thinking about health gain as opposed to weight loss. Yes, that's a nice way of
that we
looking
should eat more when it's this weather, so that we are not gaining weight, but we are still staying warm.
Yeah, actually, it's just good to focus on wholesome nutrition, and of course, because it's warm, you can go for clear soups, you know, or maybe butternut soup or soup from bone broth and that kind of stuff. But of course, you know, take off that top layer, you know, the fatty one.
Layer.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that if you are trying to lose weight, this is going to be a boost. One, in this cold weather, you don't get to sweat very fast. So what you do, instead of taking all those hot things, come on, generate that energy from your own fat cells. So that works very well.
All right, thank you very much. We'll have to wind up right there. And that is Dr. Esther Dindi, who's a physician and wellness expert, Dr. Kakuo Karoga, who's an ENT surgeon and lecturer, and Angeline Mangati, who's a clinical officer, but we've also learned a student.